Commission at 6:02. If we can rise for the invocation. Commissioner Ramos, can you lead us in the invocation?
Heavenly Father, we just give you thanks for this gift of life, for all the blessings that you have given us. We thank you for allowing us to be here tonight to conduct business for the city of San Juan. We ask that you bless the city of San Juan, all its citizens, city employees, the city commission, and all our guests tonight and their family. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All may be seated. Under public comments, we have Ramiro Treviño.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. Mayor, Commissioners, my reason for being before you tonight is we've had some concerns still. We haven't been able to know as to what resolution came about concerning the water bill for the Basilica. We hope that it was there was some type of resolution achieved, but nothing has been known. We keep asking questions and we hear nothing. We hope that the resolution was a payment resolution. Secondly, my other wanting to say tonight is that we were pleased with the workshop last week and the people in the different colonias where these projects have to be carried out are happy that finally we were, most of you were able to come together and achieve that needed resolution working towards those projects. The fact that State Representative Mando Martinez and Tito Palacios came and took the step forward to try to help is excellent. Thank you.
Public comments I put myself, and I want to address that tonight the meeting is not being webcast. Apparently it's not by recommendation, but a suggestion from legal. And I'm stating that we openly have discussed webcasting in our budget workshops over time on projects. And when the monies were approved and accepted from the AEP, it was understood what those monies were going to be purchasing. And we've been webcasting for a few of the meetings. But there's concerns and it's not being done. The concerns hopefully will be brought up. I'm hoping that this commission sticks to what it approved, and that in all the discussions that we had was that webcasting provides for transparency to our community. What is the opinion of the public is the opinion of the public. You're here to tell us what your opinions are. We're here to hear them. And then each of us makes our own. And so I hope that we're not in any way ever suggesting that we do away with public comments or go back to put them at the end of a meeting, but rather continue to be open to it. And I'm hoping that that's where we go, because the last time that I did Pledge of Allegiance, it was to an American flag that talks about us having a right to speak and not to be censored or in any way kept from voicing our opinions. And so that is what I wanted to let you know. We are not broadcasting tonight live. Hopefully it is being recorded, and when council comes to the commission with some suggestions, that we can go back and do what this was intended to do. Thank you. Presentations.
I think, Mayor, for the record, I think I've asked that we place that on the agenda so that we can discuss it, and not one of my emails to you or the city manager have even remotely addressed censorship. My emails have been of suggestions and recommendations for disclaimers and for formal city action on the webcasting. That's what my emails have been.
And it's not being broadcast tonight because of those.
Just wanted to clarify that for the record, Mayor. Thank you.
A, presentation by Hidalgo County election officials on plans to implement vote centers for countywide election day polling locations for this year's constitutional election in November. Hidalgo County Elections Office, I'm understanding they're not here tonight, but Mr. Rodriguez is going to give a summary.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight I come before you. The elections department from the county was not able to join us tonight. They called just a short time ago to let me know that they would not be here because of there's still questions from the County Commissioners Court as to how they want to proceed with the voting centers. But I'm here to just briefly let you know I attended a meeting yesterday with our elections administrator, Yvonne Ramon, in regards to the super voting sites. I learned a lot yesterday in regards to this because there's been a lot of concerns from the community and elected officials. What they're proposing is super voting centers just for this November election. This all started out in Lubbock County, and it's been doing pretty good. They're concerned, well, not concerns, they wanted to roll this out in Hidalgo County, and the reason that there's a push right now, as you know, when you do something like this, you have to go before the DOJ, Department of Justice, and ask for permission to do so, and you've got to give a 60-day window. So the Elections Department has been aggressive in trying to get this done, but unfortunately it's met with some resistance. And I'm here just to let you know just some pros and cons of these super voting centers. These voting centers, what they do is they consolidate precincts. Instead of having, in the past, and let's talk about our city, the fire station on the north side, we have, I believe it's 4 precincts that vote in the fire station during election day, and 4 precincts that vote at what used to be Austin Middle School. And so what they want to do is consolidate those through early voting and election day. But the good thing about it is that these voting centers, super voting centers, anyone can vote anywhere in Hidalgo County. A lot of the folks that, based on the times that I've worked the elections, especially on election day, there's long lines and people have to wait because the availability of the machines, the parking, and what it'll do now is that people that are traveling from outside, that work in La Jolla, that work in Mercedes, that work a long way, can now go to the nearest early super voting location and be able to vote. And there was a lot of talk that they were going to close precincts down, and that's not what they want to do. They want to be able to consolidate them, and also that people can vote anywhere. If they go out to lunch, they can go and vote before they go to work. They can stop by a place outside their work. And so these are things that I thought were very positive. I think you look at the efficiency of doing this, and it's really good. The issue is...
Suggesting, though, that it only be one place?
Yes, well, they're asking for suggestions,
place,
but really one place. Like they were recommended one location for the city of San Juan, which was the fire station number 2.
Early and election day.
Early and election day. But remember, election day and early voting, you can vote anywhere in the county.
Not yet.
Well, I mean, it's proposed. But what I'm saying is that I think this is good because based on the people, like I said, working the elections and hearing what the people say, the voters, you know, they just wish they could have come, they would have had an opportunity to vote from where they come out of work, somewhere that was closer, because what they've found is that there's some voting centers that actually have more people because of, I guess, the population of those precincts show up there to vote, and hence the long lines. In other words, we want people to vote. We don't want to discourage them from not voting. We want them to vote. So these voting centers, and you being able to vote anywhere in Hidalgo County, is pretty positive, I think. That's my take on that. I think it's good that people have an opportunity to go somewhere close to where they work and vote. And I'd have to drive all the way to San Juan to drive to Austin Middle School, drive to the fire station, and to do their voting when they can do it somewhere close, and they have plenty of time to do it. That's really the key. But
I just have a quick question. I apologize for interrupting and for coming in late, but so it is decided
No, sir, no, sir. What I'm doing right now.
Let me just finish my question, though. It is decided that the proposal, or what they're moving forward is to make every voting site on election day a voting center? Because the way I understood it, there were only going to be certain super voting centers, or whatever they're calling them.
Well,
And
yes,
so
sir.
not all of them would be, on election day, would be voting centers.
What I was discussed to me yesterday, there would be all.
It would be all.
It would be all. So,
Voting centers, from a legal standpoint, the voting that the county is asking for recommendations, do they have to be pre-approved voting centers? In
Right.
other words, centers we've used before, or do we have to now go through the process of suggesting? Because if they are super centers, the centers we've used before, I'm not sure are adequately, I mean, the parking, the room
Correct.
to be termed a super center.
right, and so let me just kind of keep going, and I'll answer some of the questions that I think we're heading towards right now, is that, based on the conversation yesterday, is that these voting centers, they really want to go where it's very easy for the voter to come in. In other words, they want to be efficient, I said that earlier, maximizing space, where you can put as many machines as possible in the room. You have plenty of parking where people can come in and vote. Get in and out is what their goal is. The key here is going to be that if we do any changes to the voting, when I mentioned earlier, any changes to a voting location, if you change, has to go through the Department of Justice, and that's the first step. So once you do that, the other one that they wanted to do was get away from the schools. You know, as the voting day comes, you have these long lines at the schools, the parking, people getting out of school. It becomes you have a mix of people there that tends to lead to sometimes incidents that you don't want to. You want to be able to have a location where people can come in. There's plenty of machines, there's plenty of parking. They come in, they come out. And remember, these are places that are located throughout the county. It's just not, any particular, I guess, my question to them was, when they do adopt a voting center, what precincts and what's going to be the parameters of, what's going to justify a voting center. So anyway, that's where they're at right now, and they talked about the cost. The other issue is that if they have these super voting centers, and if a city decides to say, you know what, we're going to run our own election, or we're going to join you. Now, if you let the county do your election, they'll automatically put the ballot on every one of these super voting locations, okay? But if you say, well, the city wants to do it, but we still want to make it available to everyone that's in La Jolla, Mercedes, north of Edinburgh, well, now we have to pay extra for that ballot, for that to be on the ballot for them at that location. So these are some of the questions that we're still dealing with. But going back to the parking, going back to the voting space, when they recommended Fire Station number 2, my concern was the parking. If you're going to make that a super center, it's a super voting location, it's going to be a very busy location. And I've always had a concern with the safety there, with all the vehicles and stuff like that. And luckily, Lord, thank God, nothing's ever happened, but the potential is there. But I'm coming to you today based on what I heard yesterday, and what I heard today from the county administrator, the election administrator, is that the county commissioners are still up in the air on how they want to do this. But I wanted to share what I heard yesterday, and which I thought was pretty encouraging to some degree, and then the other degree, it's going to be a hard decision for the city leaders, yourself, mayor, and commissioners, to decide if we're going to have 2 super voting locations, or we just have one. But what would be the best place?
What's the deadline for that discussion for the county?
Well, they want to have it,
Pre-clear it.
right. They gave me a form yesterday to fill out on possible locations, so I could turn that in by this Friday. And the county commissioners court will convene next Tuesday, is my understanding that I was told today. And they want us to do some more, they want to do some more investigation, not investigation, but get more input from the community as to where, especially from y'all, the commission, where would be the best location. When they asked for super voting centers, the county had 30 polling sites, it went to 60, it doubled. And really it wasn't meant to double, it was meant to decrease in size. And so, as far as polling locations. But
So in sending the suggestions that you're talking to, that they send a form, that needs to come before the commission for that discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And they were going to here to present, so they're going to put it off, but they're still doing some investigation, but I just want to make you aware of it in case you're, based on the city secretary's point of view, I think that it just needs to be considered where San Juan would like to have one, or if San Juan does not choose to say, you know what, we're going to stay traditional, we're going to stay with what we've usually done in the past, but there's going to be a cost associated with that, because as you know, we deal with the renting the machines from the county. I've already got some quotes in already on what it would take, like we've talked about before, some investigation that I'm doing for our election. So those are things that we just have to be ready for. But tonight, I'm just here just to give you an update. I did attend the meeting, and it was, in my point, I think very positive. And I think the reason here, it's just for November election. It's not addressing the future elections coming up. It's just for the constitutional amendments that will happen this November. This is where all this is coming from.
Just something real quick. If in case, for some reason, it will be brought up to you, for some reason to have it here, let's try to stay away from this building, having any kind of election here or anything like that. I don't, you know, this is a beautiful, beautiful library. It's for the public. I know it's a public place, but let's try to stay away from this building. You know, I'd hate to see how it, you know, I know how the elections are here in any other city, should I say, and it's not fun. And I'd hate to see our kids or our citizens, you know, go through that, okay? Just
very
my
good.
recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. But just something to think about for
Also
you
have
and
a
the commission.
comment, Mayor, if I may. Just a suggestion, I know that it'll be really difficult to find a building that is vacant and not being used, you know, when elections come around. And there will always be pros and cons wherever we choose a location, but just a suggestion for consideration, Amigos del Valle would be something that we could consider. It's got a wide street, and there's plenty of space, you know, for parking, and that's something just to consider. And that's all the comments I have.
I know when Mr. Cervantes worked on a map for the folks that sat on the planning and zoning, we got a very good look at the population and the center points of the city. I think for all fairness, as something that's centrally located where folks from the north can get to and folks from the south can get to with the same type of travel distance. And I think that that's what would be fair. Nothing all the way south and nothing all the way north. Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
And I think we kind of determined what that middle is now
Yeah,
for the
and,
city.
no, none of this,
Might
this
be
is,
worth, for future use, might be worth just submitting the application now. Even if you don't use it, you would have pre-clearance to use it in the future if the need came up.
well, and like I said, this is just discussion, and there's no formal action for tonight, but I think I just wanted to hear your suggestions so that if we need to do something, I've already, Mr. Rodriguez and I have already talked about this. If we need to do something, Mayor, you know, either if they need an answer right away, if we have to do a special call meeting, I doubt that, but if it came to that, well, then at least y'all would have some information in your hands. Okay? Thank you.
Item B, update on the Amigos del Valle Green Roof Project, Mr. Rodriguez.
Mayor, we have this evening with us Mr. Augusto Sanchez representing Texas A&M Kingsville. Also, Mr. Elizondo has been keeping tabs on the project, and so if it pleases you and the commission, I'd like to have both of the gentlemen comment.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We come before you again to give you a progress update on the Amigos del Valle Life Green Roof Project. We're trying to have this monthly to give you all see where we're at, and we're coming along with this project since we had problems bidding it out before, and TAMUC has taken over. With us, we have Augusto Sanchez from TAMUC, and if it pleases the court, I'd like to turn it over to him for the presentation on the progress. With you, in front of you all, I passed out a Texas A&M University Live Green Roof update that he will be sharing with you. Augusto.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm here to give you an update of this project. The project is moving forward. Right now, in your package, you can see in the first set of documents is We already acquired the materials that we need to start growing the plants. So we have soil, we have the seeds, most of them from local or from regional nurseries. So the information is there. At this point, Texas A&M University is covering the expenses, and we will later on down the road we will sit down with Mr. Elizondo to discuss how we're going to deal with the matching section of this grant. But yeah, we have those native plants as that I showed you in my last intervention about 6 weeks ago, and also there's a preliminary report on the engineered soil load test. So as we know, the structure there has a structural constraint there, and we definitely want to be under that limit that is 22 pounds per square foot. In that preliminary report is we described the method that we're using. It's a standard from the American Society of Testing Materials, so which is the authority in these issues. So at this point, we are actually collecting the data. So these tests take up to 24 hours each. So it's going to be a long process, and we're going to test 2 different types of soils for at least 10 times to have statistical significance on the results, and then we will turn the results to the city engineer and the structural engineer, Mr. Rubiano, for comments and final approval. And the other part on the packet is it's a quote from TCI, which is the contractor that worked on the building installing the membrane. There are 2 quotes there. One of them is it's for up to $51,000, which definitely was overwhelming for the project. So we negotiated with them, and they're willing to charge for the design of the framing and the installation, not only for the framing but also the actual green roof. $30,000.
Say that it's phase 1 and phase 2, is that what you're making reference to?
I'm not sure.
Where's the quote for 50-some thousand?
It's there. It's
Summation of something, or what?
yeah, it's 17 plus 30 something.
Is that 33,000?
Yeah. And the TCI is willing to, and it's expressed in the quote. They're willing to donate the 17,000 to the city, so we can take that as part of the match that the city has already committed for this project. Yeah. No, the 17,000 is the number that is crossed in the.
They cross out 17,850,
Yeah.
and then they put 30,000.
Yeah, that's what they're gonna charge for the work, and the 17,000 is gonna be their in-kind donation for the project. And for my next intervention, hopefully in 4 weeks from now, we will intend to show you some actual pictures of the trays and the plants that are going to be installed. At this point, they're being grown at the greenhouses, the USDA facilities up in Kingsville. They're dealing with this part of the project, and I also would like to show you a sample of the trays that we're going to be installing in the roof, and by then we should have finalized the testing of the soil, and that will be turned into the city engineer and eventually Mr. Rubiano.
30,000, was that something was anticipated, or is that something in addition because of the relooking
No,
at this?
it's already considered in the budget.
17 that was over the budget, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we worked to get that as a in-kind.
Yes. No problem.
Happen. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your work, and we know it's been a challenge, but you know, it is an experiment, and this is cutting-edge stuff, and so we're glad to be participating in it. We thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you, sir.
Public hearing ordinance, public hearing authorizing city manager to submit a grant application number 2013H395 TXTJ in the amount of $16,663 under the Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance Grant Program. Opening up this public hearing at 6:27. Ms. Woods?
Yes, this is a brand-new grant that the city received, well, will be received after we submit the application to the Department of Justice. It'll be for portable radios, speaker mics, and chargers that will issue to the San Juan Local Law Enforcement Regional Response Team.
I'd like to open it up to the public for any questions, any comments regarding this application. Any questions, any comments? There being none from the public, is there anything from the commission?
Ms. Woods, is this something that will be also going through the Lower Rio Grande Valley Development Council?
No, this is our direct,
Directly from the,
yes, it's a direct allocation received on an annual basis, and we just have to identify what type of equipment we're going to buy.
fantastic.
I understand it's for 9 units, is that correct?
Yes.
How many more do we still need to fill after these 9? Still more?
A lot.
Even from the budget and from now, how many, Chief? And I know you've been working on it, and since talking about the radios, Chief, I know you've been working on funding. Okay. Okay, halfway. And Chief, your efforts on the, along the lines of the funding which we're now applying for with the remainder?
With this new 9 that we already have put in 9, so I've put about 18 radios. For staffing at the police department, we're looking at about 24 radios.
So we still need to convert?
Yes, and that allows us to a radio for every single officer out on the road at any given time, even between 6 to 8 officers. But these portable radios, we should purchase the portable radios. We still need to purchase the unit radios, which is a lot more expensive.
Very good, thank you. All right, I'd like to, any questions or comments from the commission? If not, I'll close this public hearing at 6:29.
Thank you.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Mayor.
Second by Commissioner Ramos. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Woods. Item B, consider an ordinance amending the budget for the 2012-13 fiscal year, providing additional appropriations to the general fund in the amount of $339,288, the unit utility fund in the amount of $421,373, and the hotel motel occupancy tax fund in the amount of $24,000. Mr. Rodriguez?
This particular item, Mayor, has to do with appropriation of projects that was done after we finalized our budgetary process starting October 1st. There's a few projects that have been brought before the commission, the grand majority of what you see this evening for approval subject to mid-year appropriation. And we're at this juncture now where we're a little bit past mid-year and we need to go ahead and address these matters so that we don't carry over too long. As I said, I think the grand majority, given the supporting documentation that we've got before you this evening, are items that have come to the commission and again have been funded subject to this procedure. So I'm hoping that it meets favorably with your approval.
You say that all of them have come before us?
The grand majority, Mayor. I think there might be maybe 1 or 2 that were done or have to be handled administratively as a result of the need that we foresee to finish off the rest of the year.
That would be what?
It'd be, for instance, the hotel motel line item for $24,000, Mayor. That was not something that came to the commission. It did on a previous budget year. However, the fundings were not spent as originally expected as a result of staff turnover. In that particular item, there was still a need to address those improvements. The specific improvements are bathroom facilities at the wetlands. We still had a lot of traffic of folks out there, and we didn't have adequate facilities that would be available to address that need. In talking to Mr. Elizondo and the staff, they felt that very necessary, and we proceeded to execute the plan, although the planning was done for a previous year. And so we just carried over the intent, and at this point, we're asking that the funds be appropriated out of our hotel motel fund
in order to address that expenditure.
On the appropriations, I'm going to be referencing the general fund, the administration, and I know that that has to do with attorney's fees. 30,000, Mr. Rodriguez, was from the contract with Ramon Garcia. And the other 70,000?
During the review, Mayor, of how we put the budget together with Mr. Lopez, our former finance director, there was a line item that was identified in our budget as having to do with the litigation with the city of FAR. As you all might recall, during the year last year, that was brought to some closure. And when I saw that line item, in the interest of balancing the budget, I discussed the matter with Mr. Lopez, and we opted not realizing that there was just a general line item for legal fees. It was just, I suppose, mislabeled. It said City of FAR litigation, that basically I lined it off, thinking that there would be no need to have that line item carry over for this current fiscal year. In talking to finance staff, they alerted me to the fact that was part of the line item that we're using for legal fees, and then in retrospect, we should not have lined it out, other than change the actual label on the, how the item was labeled as it was carrying over on the budget.
So if I look at the page that you all prepared on the summary with the mid-year budget amendment, and I go into that legal services under the account, you had budgeted $52,000. Is that after you took that out? You had his original budget and amended budget for $52,000, and now you're asking for $101,000 in addition to that.
Right, that's keeping there's a memo also as part of the supporting information, Mayor, where the finance staff looked, Ms. Rodriguez, our finance clerk, looked at the numbers, and they're basically identical in regard to expenditures today versus last year. Basically, the only difference is that when I took action to line out that item and not have it carry over in the structure of this year's budget, that I was probably overzealous in lining that out and not looking at the numbers. I just went on the basis of the label that had attached to it, which was litigation with the city of FAR. So that was a little bit misleading when I looked at the budget.
And I saw you provided the copy of the contract for Mr. Munoz. Where's the contract for Mr. Vasquez? Because you put that we have him as counsel also. Where's his contract?
At this point, what we've done, Mary, is with guidance from Mr. Munoz, as he secured those services, we have gone through him and obtain approval to issue payments on a lot of these matters. I don't have the
There's
city.
no contract between him
Not
and
to
the
my
city of San
knowledge,
Juan?
no, ma'am. I think legal counsel has reached out to Mr. Vasquez for assistance based on, I guess, previous arrangements.
If you look at the bottom of my contract, the bottom of the first page. Oh, okay. My engagement agreement with the city allows me to retain other legal counsel as I need to assist me in this matter or in representing the city of San Juan. And so through that contract, it allows me to bring in other counsel.
Do we know, but when it comes to the rates, do we know what they're charging?
Their
us
rates
per month?
can't be any higher than my rates.
Okay.
So whoever I bring in, regardless of who I bring in, and that's to do various work for the city, work that I may be too busy to do, work that I want to refer to another attorney, as attorneys do. I refer that to Mr. Vasquez, who's come in and handled the job very adequately, and he takes over with it. But as I said, it doesn't go over what the city has agreed to pay me.
Okay, so then
It's just work that he does.
okay, and then, if we are budgeting, I guess whatever the contract is, I think we don't have you on a retainer, right?
No return.
So we don't have a amount at any point. If we're saying we're budgeting right now 150,000, and you're saying that's what our budget is, then anything that is being billed by you or billed by Mr. Vasquez is being billed by the knowing that that's the budget that's available. And then if there's anything superseding that, that's something that would have to come through this process?
Something that Mr. Rodriguez
Correct.
can bring back to the city.
Which is essentially what's happening in this
With a
case, Mayor.
30,000 from,
That's one example, and the other one is the fact that I, again, inadvertently, not realizing that was part of the fund for legal expenses, I lined it out as a result of the mislabeling, if you will, on former litigation that I knew was gone. We didn't have to worry about. But you're absolutely correct. Should there be, legal situations that we need to have covered beyond what's in the budget, then that would merit coming back to the commission for an additional appropriation in light of whatever, caused
the need to have additional funds committed.
Questions from the commission?
Hi, Mayor, just to interject, there was a typo in the executive summary inadvertently for the library revenue that's noted on page 1 of the executive summary. We put $1,800. The correct number actually should have been $1,080. So we just kind of superimport.
Are the amounts that we're approving different, the totals? Are they going to change because of that, or no?
No, ma'am. This is basically revenue coming in from the county, the agreement, the interlocal that we have with the county to provide services to the county residents. So it's basically, we're just streaming revenue into the operating budget as a result of that income coming in. So it washes, it evens out.
In reference to the increase on the health insurance, I noticed that for the city, we're doing that, I guess, for city employees, or let me rephrase that, for waterworks employees, that's separate, and
Yes.
that'll come out of their separate budget.
Exactly, yes, sir.
Do you anticipate, and the only reason to say this is because we're going through this at my company, where we're looking at renewal, and it's going to be a 25% increase in rates. This was from last year. Are we anticipating a 25% increase this year as well?
I will be in the process of requesting a re-rate on that, Mayor Pro Tem. Obviously, it's a component of the budgetary process. What drove this particular line item here is that we got it very, very late in the game as we were completing our balanced budget process, and so we had to entertain it afterwards, which is, again, this procedure. We awarded the contract subject to, but I don't think we looked at a significant increase. It was something on the part, I think, in my time with the city, I think we fared very well in regard to our negotiation, and I am very glad to report that, unlike other cities, our benefits have not been watered down. It's the same exact benefits as we've had all along. So I don't have an answer for you at this point, but I think during
Well, I
the
think
budget
it's going to
process
be
we'll.
difficult to determine right now, too, with everybody kind of in limbo on how that's going to happen. But I guess if we can push the issue and make sure that we have something by the time we're going through the budget
Absolutely.
process, so that we can be a little more prepared.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And of course, by no fault of yours or staff, it's just the nature
The
of how the
process.
healthcare industry's operating right now. But
Yes, sir. We'll make sure we factor it into the overall budget process.
One final thing, Mr. Rodriguez, on
Yes,
the
ma'am.
actual, I know that it's coming from the unreserved fund balance, and I know that they quoted here, you all did a 33% of the budget expenditures. Tell me exactly what would be left if this was approved?
Basically, the situation here, Mayor, is that we are alerting you to the fact that at this point, we've got fund balance in the amount of 33% remaining, although I think that the auditor, just at the last meeting, I think, I looked at the numbers, and that might have been more closer to 35% maybe, unless I'm off on my rounding off or my calculations. I don't have a number after this appropriation, Mayor, what it would fall down to, or decrease, but I still think that we're well within the 25% policy that we've handled historically. I'll be
So
glad
it's,
to,
it's the actual that the auditor told us was at 3,128,000, correct?
yes, ma'am,
Okay, so we would just subtract whatever is being approved tonight from that,
correct.
and that would tell us what we are at
Yes,
this
ma'am.
point,
That is correct.
at 2.8. And you're suggesting the amount would be, what's the 25% of that?
Well, it has to be, the relationship is the 25% of our operating budget, which is nearly $9 million. And so that's where, as long as we maintain that 25% policy item in mind, then I think we'll be, it's basically we're keeping up with what the policy is. Again, unless something drastic were to come up and we needed to deal with an unforeseen issue and fund balance is the only source, then at that point, we'd have to revisit that. But at this point, based on the information that we've got today, that's where we would stand after this ordinance gets approved.
And I think that, I know some of these things that came up because the need came at the moment. But I think as we look at them and we're in the budget time, I think we need to start putting some of these as part of the budget so that we're not doing this kind of appropriations at this time of the year. And I have not seen an expense report. Where are those monthly expense reports that tells us where we're at?
We need to produce that, Mayor. Right now, in
When's the
interim,
last one that we got?
I'm going to say probably March, April, Mayor. I need to revisit that. Yes, we try and,
Every line item by line item?
I think so. That's the one that Mr. Lopez historically would prepare and provide to you to keep you all up with expenses. So we'll revisit that and catch up and get them to you. If I may, just one comment, just to illustrate the kind of, again, matters that we deal with, again, that are things that come up, Mayor. The big chunk that I recall out of general fund, for instance, was the renovation that we had to perform on Amigos del Valle as a result of the plumbing becoming dysfunctional. And so at that point, we had no choice. In order for the building to operate after the roof or structural repairs were completed, it basically took a revamping of certainly the bathroom facilities, but I think at that point, we took time to go ahead and just do this thing right and ensure that the facility would be operational and available to the program, the Amigos del Valle program, as well as the citizens in general. So again, that's the kind of thing that most of these are a one-time type of scenario. It's not something that got left, obviously the attorney's fees, as I explained them to you, but it's right. It's just things that come up as we go, and that if it's a pleasure of the commission that we proceed, then at that point, we bring it to you, and if that's the case, we track it, and at this juncture, again, we take care of the matter by appropriating the funding.
I have
Go ahead.
one question. My interest is streets on 1048, 10-48. Mr. Rodriguez, you came up with an amendment for 65,252. Just wanted to know how you came up with that number.
My memory doesn't fail me, Commissioner. I think that has to do with the work that was commissioned for Cruz Hogan Engineers to do the design for the lowering of those canals. It's a professional service. Yes, sir. Again, it's one of those where the commission provided direction to proceed and address that immediately.
That is correct.
Yes, sir, and that was the only way to.
Well, most all of these amendments are really good amendments that need to be done. I'm looking at some of these. Some are safety concerns, like in the Parks and Rec, the $10,000, but has to do with safety. In regards to the library, in regards to the streets, those are street improvements that we really need. The communication systems that we previously had discussed and approved, this is part of these budget amendments. So there are really good budget amendments that we need to approve tonight.
And on that one, the communications one, from my understanding from Mr. Baca, that will also create a savings in the future.
That is correct.
All right, any other questions? There is none, is there a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
I vote opposing. I voted against the attorney's fees on the contract for $30,000. That's the reason I'm opposing the final approval of this amendment. Item then, C, consider second and final reading of the ordinance authorizing the issuance, sale, and delivery of the City of San Juan, Texas Waterworks and Sewer System Revenue Bonds, Series 2013-A, in the aggregate principal amount of $6,170,000, providing for the payment of the bonds for the first lien on pledge of the net revenues of the city waterworks and sewer systems, resolving other matters incident and relating to the issuance, payment, security, sale, and delivery of the bonds, approving an application to and the lending rate scale offered by the Texas Water Development Board under the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, and making other provisions regarding such bonds and matters incident thereto. Mr. Rodriguez.
Mayor, at this point, we're basically in the last stretch in order to consummate this transaction. Mr. Chris Vela with First Southwest is in attendance this evening, and he was kind enough to prepare a handout for your consideration with regard to the numbers that were put together in what the Water Development Board announced for our particular transaction. Mr. Vela conveyed to me that he was pleased. I think overall we've got a little better, slightly better news than what the projections were. And so that only helps our debt capacity in an effort to continue having this continuity and investing on capital improvements for the utility system. What we anticipate, Mayor, is after this reading, we have that second reading pending for this. I'm sorry, this is the second reading and final, apologize. And at this point, it's just a matter of going through the process of closing, getting the funds in escrow, and beginning the actual real construction aspect of this project. So if it's okay with you and the commission, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Vela and see if I can just have him come up and provide you with some highlights from his vantage point.
We'll have our bond counsel, Mr. Ramirez, present. Are you present for that, or? Okay.
Mayor, members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen, for the record, my name is Chris Vela, financial advisors for the city, and we're with First Southwest Company. We handed out this presentation for you, and if you'll go to tab 1, we'll usually like to start out with a municipal market update, and the first slide that you have there is a bond buyer revenue index, which provides you 20-year history from 1993 to the present. And it kind of gives you an idea of what interest rates have been doing, not necessarily for general obligation bonds, but specifically for revenue bonds. And if you go to the right-hand corner, the little box there, it says 447, that's the current. The average for the 20-year average is 538. The max rate was 737, and the 20-year minimum was 406. That came in December. If you look at those dates right next on those boxes, it kind of tells you where we're at. Now, this index tracks 25 revenue bonds maturing in 30 years.
Thank you.
And of course, the average ratings are A1 to A+, very similar to what you have on your water and sewer. And of course, the lowest point was 406, and that was the lowest since 1965, which occurred this past December. The next one is the same index with the same data, but a smaller snapshot. It's a 5-year, and it kind of gives you, you know, if you look through the bullet points, the chart represents the bond buyer revenue index since 08, since the 08 financial crisis, and you can kind of see where that kind of went up, and also when the BABs, the Build America bonds, were also terminated, you also see that. And then the high demand and the low supply of municipal bonds has contributed to the low tax exempt rates environment that we're at right now. Now, interest rates right now seem to be going up, and a lot of it has to do with yields and things of that nature. And I think the last time I spoke to you a little bit about the quantitative easing on the part of the federal policymakers, and on the purchase of $85 million. There's been some sort of representation that this program may be curtailed. The question is when and in what amount, and that's what's driving this market today. We go to the second tab, we have the transaction summary. And of course, the city of San Juan submitted an application for funding of the Phase 1 water infrastructure projects to the Water Development Board's Drinking Water State Revolving Fund in June of 12. These particular improvements are for the water treatment plant, as you well know. And funding for Phase 1 was approved by the Texas Water Development Board on December the 12th as a 70% loan and a 30% loan forgiveness, and the amounts are there. $6,170,000 is the loan that you will be authorizing tonight if you approve in the affirmative, and a loan forgiveness or a grant amount, and they use the term loan forgiveness synonymous with grant, of $2,586,308. That does not have to be repaid. The funding of the bonds is eligible in addition to the loan forgiveness to a subsidy, a rate subsidy, and I'll show you another chart here in a few pages here, of 125 interest rate subsidy in accordance with the Drinking One State Revolving Fund program. Final pricing of the transaction occurred on June the 4th, where we got an amortization of the loan through 33, and of course your interest cost is 213, which is a very, very attractive interest rate, not to mention the loan forgiveness. And of course your average annual debt service on the $6 million, $6,170,000 is $378,000 per year. Now, this next chart that shows the pricing, we use in our business what we call the Municipal Market Data Index, and what you see there is that A, which is the rating that is relates to what the city's rating is, which is the red dotted line, and the blue line is actually what you got from the Water Development Board. So that's probably your more the best depiction of what kind of rates you got. The next page is just a recap of what we translated in the transaction summary, just a repetition of the loan and the grant amount. And on the bottom, it gives you the financing cost, and of course, the origination fee. Those are monies that the Water Development Board charges on the loan and the loan forgiveness. It used to be that it was only on the loan. But anyway, the next page, when you read the caption, Mayor, you talked about, it said about net revenues, and net revenues are very important. If you look, starting on the left, we start out with the total operating revenues of the system, of the water and sewer system, less the expenses, and now we look at the available net revenues, which is $1,997,416. You take your existing debt, then your existing general obligated debt, you had some crossover debt that you've done over the years, your total existing water and sewer debt, and then in the box is the $6,170,000, and then your total debt service, and then look at your coverage. One of the things that your bond documents require is that you maintain 1.25 average annual. So you're it's a very strong credit, or has become a very, very strong credit in the last few years. And of course, the next column is a surplus after all allocations have been made on an annual basis. Schedule of events going forward on the next page kind of takes you historically what has happened. On December, the Water Development Board approved the financing. On June the 4th, we had the pricing. On June the 11th, the Commission considers and approves the resolution authorizing issuance of the Series 213A Water and Sewer Revenue Bonds. City Commission considers approval of the Drinking Water Loan Forgiveness Agreement with the TWDB as well. And we're scheduled for a closing in mid-July of 16, and then the next dates are your payment dates. Now, the last tab takes into consideration Phase 2. Remember that there was also a water line that was also part of this whole financing. And the City of San Juan submitted an application for the Phase 2 to the Water Development Board in August of 12. The funding for Phase 2 was approved by the Water Development Board in January, a month later. And again, the same ratios of 70-30. So your loan is $1,040,000 and your loan forgiveness is $600,000. 125 interest rate subsidy, and the transaction will be structured as follows: an amortization of loan through 33 level debt payments, closing to begin right after closing of series of this bonds. As soon as we get through with this transaction, we'll start on the next transaction. And our current estimated rate is a $215 to a $230 through maturity. Current estimated average annual payments of $85,000 per year. Now, the last time that I was here at the workshop, we talked about capacity. And here's where we kind of get into some of the good news. There was two things that happened. One, at the first reading of the meeting, we approved the audit, and that was the first time that we were able to go through the audit and reestablish the new net, or calculate the new net revenues. And your net revenues went up by approximately from 11 to 12 by about $94,000, okay? Your interest cost went from what we had projected, went down on the water and sewer approximately, based on average annual, about $21,000. And then your second project, the water line, went down by about $36,000 that we have estimated, for a total of about $151,000 in savings. So that kind of contributed to the overall picture. You remember that I had mentioned to you that we had a capacity of 10.8. Now, one of the things that I want you to keep in mind when I give you this capacity, and it all ties back to the net revenues, you don't want to issue all the way, because what happens if in a year your net revenues decline? You want to have some cushion. So I would recommend that we keep $1 million something equivalent in debt service under the capacity, just to be on the safe side. Because in your ordinance that you have passed, you have covenant to do, first of all, to maintain a coverage rate on the existing plus the additional bonds of 1.25 average annual, but you have also covenant to maintain rates sufficient to keep that coverage.
Time that we have debt issued, or 10 million for the first For a year, for right now, for a year. For whatever we have,
For this period of time, for this snapshot, for this net revenues that we have calculated based on the audit.
right. So when we're looking at, some of the other projects that we had a time to discuss, then that's another adding to, correct? Right. And that's what we keep in mind, that million buffer is what you're stating.
So, in essence, your capacity is now at $13,150,000. So, a little bit up, a little bit over $2 million over what we had the last time. So it's very, very good news. So that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them.
Any questions from members of the commission?
Very good report, Mayor.
No, Mayor, just conversing quickly here with, other than conversing with the city engineer, and it appears that if all was as it's been going this well, Mayor, looking at the possibility of a bid process in July into August as far as, again, the construction in earnest beginning. So,
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve is presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Garza. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item A, under 7, contractual resolutions. Consider entering into interlocal agreement with the County of Hidalgo Urban County Program for participation in the Community Development Block Grant Program for fiscal year 2013. Mr. Rodriguez.
this is a yearly, somewhat relatively new, but it's a yearly requirement that the Department of Housing and Urban Development in Washington, D.C. has referred over to this designated contact or basically facilitator, which is the Hidalgo County Urban County Program. This is a yearly agreement where we basically enter into the interlocal with the urban county folks in order for them to manage our projects and do everything that is required of HUD in Washington, D.C. So it's just something that comes back to us on a yearly basis. So,
But it's something that we had already discussed and voted on when we proposed it, correct?
yes,
I
ma'am.
looked at the items that are submitted, and those are the
Right.
amounts.
It's the list of the projects, basically.
Okay. Are there any questions from the members of the commission? None. Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second? All in favor state aye. Aye. Motion passes. Item B, consider entering into interlocal cooperation agreement between the City of San Juan and the County of Hidalgo for roadway improvements to Thomas Road. Mr. Rodriguez.
We were notified, Mayor, that the precinct office, precinct number 2, is planning improvements to Thomas Road. The overall section slated for improvement is between Jackson Road, this is an east-west roadway, south of the levees, generally speaking, just for the public in general here. The Thomas Road, I think, is just outside of the levee system for the overflow of runoff. And it's an east-west road. The segment of road is basically from Jackson Road all the way to Stewart Road. It just so happens that if you go 500 feet west of Stewart Road and Thomas Road, we have a city limit boundary there. So 500 feet of that roadway are in our corporate limits, and as a result of that, the county would like to get the city's blessing via the interlocal to proceed with those improvements. It's very preliminary in nature, Mayor. I think they were trying to secure the interlocal with us and the city of FAR for the areas that are pertinent to their corporate limits in order to ascertain all the details that need to be factored in getting this project underway. So I don't have a timetable. I really don't have, other than a section, as I explained it on my summary. I think the section of pavement is something like 66 feet. They're basically doing
Improvement, Mr. Rodriguez, a widening?
a widening, Mayor. Just basically county standards, but a wider section than your typical 22 feet of asphalt. This one is something like 66 feet, and it's made up of 1 lane each way, turning lane, plus 2 shoulders. So it should be a fairly safer road, fairly wide road, and existing right-of-way seems to be adequate in order to pull the roadway improvement. So at this point, the precinct office would like to proceed, and only 500 of that is inside our corporate limits. The majority is out in the county area.
And are we responsible for any of that maintenance on that?
Just future maintenance, Mayor, for that 500 feet, that will have, as I said, the majority of it is out in the county area with some segments of it, I suppose, once we get past Dye Road to
Have
west.
no, as far as you know, they're not asking us to put anything into this.
No, ma'am.
Just They just need this interlocal.
That and the city's blessing in approving the interlocal to perform the work inside the corporate limits.
Any questions from members of the commission? If there are none, is there a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second, Mayor.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item C, consider authorizing the city manager to request a donation from the FAR San Juan Alamo Independent School District for the existing athletic lighting of Austin Middle School for the use of the San Juan Municipal Soccer Field. Mr. Rodriguez?
Mayor, we've had some preliminary discussions with staff at the district with regard to the city's possible interest to have some power poles and related lighting fixtures donated to the city of San Juan. Initially, our interest came up as a result of the situation at our baseball fields. If you'll recall, we had to basically, as a matter of safety, and I think Mr. Ramos alluded to that during the mid-year appropriation item, we needed to, as a matter of safety, cut down on the poles and remove the lighting fixtures. The poles were in very bad condition. They were weathered, basically slanting already, and so we had to do that. That kind of left us with no lighting for our fields. In the course of looking at our options, it came to our attention that Austin Middle School was in the process of renovation here in San Juan, and we visited with district staff, and they indicated that they would not be opposed to entertaining a recommendation to the board to look at those lights, being that once the site got demolished, the salvage company that was going to be in charge of the demolition process would probably take that and factor the cost in and reduce it to some extent in their dealings with the district. Upon further review by a couple of a local electrical company as well as a well-regarded national company, Moscow Athletic Electric, it was deemed that this particular type of lighting would not be adequate for the baseball fields, however, would be adequate for a football field, soccer field type of arrangements. In my discussions with Mr. Elizondo, our Director of Parks and Recreation, he brought up to my attention that these poles that the district owns are much taller and the fixtures more complete than what we currently have for our soccer field at Municipal Park. And he felt that it'd be a good opportunity to entertain replacement of that lighting with this used poles, and that would definitely be a good asset for us. We checked things out. It appears that we've got a bid from a state contract vendor, one of the lighting companies, and the cost of relocating and installation is something in the realm of $10,000. At this point, it appears that we do have the adequate funding in the budget to undertake that improvement. Yes, ma'am. And so at this point, we're just looking for your blessing to proceed with a letter from me to Superintendent Dr. King in order to effectuate, or for them to consider our request and hopefully be able to end up with some better lighting, if you will, at that site. We're still grappling with the other fields, but, we'll continue looking at our options, and if should something arise, then at that point, obviously, we'll bring it before the commission for consideration.
That was a very good recommendation by the school district. That partnership is coming through for that.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to thank Mr. for bringing that up brought it up to the table when we had those issues with those poles and all that. It was recommended by Mr. Rodriguez to take a look at that, and we did sit down with Mr. King and Dr. King, and it's looking like we're going to go ahead and giving us a helping hand. The communication is there by our school board members and our attorneys, and I know there's more to come. So hopefully, we're all in the same team.
Just have a quick question. Mr. Rodriguez, on the $9,500, I see that it has a lot included in there. I guess I've never moved lights. Does this include all that's ready to make them operational?
Yes, sir. It includes conduit, it includes a footing, a pier footing that's going to be, I think, in the realm of 3 to 4 feet in depth. Obviously, we included pictures to illustrate the big differences between what we have today in terms of wooden poles to this metal type of pole, and certainly they're going to be very heavy. The other thing that we did is Moscow Electric or Moscow Athletic Lighting, they're basically purveyors, and they just sell you fixtures, poles, equipment. They don't do the installation per se, although they could engage a subcontractor to do that. And so we took the liberty of kind of sharing with them the local company price to do this, and they were very complimentary. They felt that if certain things were addressed, and they give Mr. Elizondo great advice, they felt that certain things were addressed and included in that price, that it was a heck of a price. Sure enough, Mr. Elizondo was kind enough to follow up for me, and he found out that it was included. So far, according to the specialist in athletic lighting, let's say the par excellence type of company, we are getting a good deal in the installation, relocation and installation of this item. So it looks rather favorable at this point.
We thought about maybe having somebody look at the integrity of the steel that's exposed.
I'm not sure to what extent, Mr. Munoz, the folks involved looked at it. I know they were on site at the school district property. In fact, we were escorted, our staff was escorted by district staff, but I don't have a for sure answer for you. It's certainly something that I think we can discuss with these folks as they, do the final assessment and determine that they're in good enough shape to be able to do the relocation.
I'm not sure if the people who quoted us the installation price would be the company that maybe they could give us some type of testing material saying, yeah, this is good for the kids to use, or if they're using parts, if they don't come out.
We'll certainly do that follow-up and ask those questions. I don't think we went that far as the minutia of all the things to be considered.
I think the reason they're being replaced is due to the fact that they're moving, of course, moving off to junior high. I think they're in great shape. They've been here for, I don't know how many, a few
How old
years,
they are.
but that's the reason that it was brought up to our attention.
Just to add the detail, really conceptually, I think what Commissioner Garza is referring to is the location of the ball or the football field today and related lighting, that's the actual site for the new school. So that has to go. I mean, that has to basically be moved, and that will allow us to basically go next door or allow them to go next door and build the new field. So those lights are really, they're going to be salvaged. So this is a good opportunity.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve as presented with the, I don't know how to say it, with the stipulation that we will have some sort of testing of the integrity of the steel.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item D, consider adopting a resolution authorizing and approving a loan forgiveness agreement with the Texas Water Development Board in the amount of $2,586,308 and other matters related thereto. Mr. Rodriguez.
Mayor, this item is part of this process that we've been talking about and that Mr. Vela alluded to in his presentation. In fact, this evening, we do have, and I think Mr. Ramirez will be set for the next transaction, but on this one, we've got Mr. Noel Valdez with a firm of McCall, Parkers, and Horton out of San Antonio. He drove this afternoon to join us, and perhaps I can ask him to make a few remarks and give you a little bit of background in regard to the purpose of the resolution. But it's essentially effectuating the grant, line item that Mr. Vela alluded to, and this is just a way to consummate that transaction, or this portion of the transaction, and ensure that we've got all the right paperwork into the state in order for them to give the final consideration. But again, Mr. Valdez is also available for any questions.
Mayor, members of the commissioner, name Noel Valdez with the law firm of McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton. As Mr. Vela mentioned earlier, this is really a grant agreement. It says loan forgiveness agreement. It's a grant agreement, and this authorizes for the mayor to execute that loan agreement with the Water Development Board that has already been negotiated and finalized. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Motion for approval? Is there a second? All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Valdez. Going on to consent agenda, approval of minutes, April 9th, 2013, April 23, 2013. B, consider the preliminary and final plat approval of Annabert subdivision being a 3.288 pre-tract of land out of the west 5 acres of Lot 1, Clark Mellon Brunches re-subdivision located at southwest corner of Sam Houston Boulevard and Veterans Boulevard as represented by Polo Soto Jr. I'd like to present the corrections to Mr. Rodriguez on the minutes. And it is my understanding we pull out of, Mr. Rodriguez, you're requesting that the last one not be in consent. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, we inadvertently placed it there. There are some variance items that Mr. Ramirez is here representing his client that he'd like to address the commission on.
Mr. Cervantes and Mr. Ramirez. Anybody?
Good afternoon. The owner is proposing to subdivide 3.288 acres into 2 commercial lots. He's trying to subdivide the property where the EC Mart is located. and the vacant property to the south and the east. The store has been established there for more than 30 years. The developer and project engineer need to comply with all the city requirements, and fire hydrants will be required at the time of issuance of a building permit. It is noted that the project engineer requested the following variances. Number one, the 15 feet of additional right-of-way dedication along Sam Houston Boulevard. Number two, 20 feet of additional right-of-way dedication along Veterans Boulevard. Number three, dedication of a 15-foot utility easement along the perimeter of the property. And number four, a 6-foot opaque buffer, which is a note on the plata. On variance number 4, during the meeting last week of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the developer agreed to comply with that. That was a communication problem between the developer and the engineer.
Problem for what?
On variance number 4,
Okay.
they're okay with that requirement. That was a communication problem between the developer and the engineer. So the variances requested are number 1, number 2, and number 3. The Planning and Zoning Commission, during their meeting last week, approved variances number 2 and 3, and not number 1. The dedication of right-of-way along Sam Houston. Along Sam Houston Boulevard. My staff recommends getting all the right-of-way everywhere. On the utility easement, staff is okay with that variance requirement because there is an alleyway along the south and east of this property, so because of the alleyway, staff is okay with the utility easement variance.
Area being developed, is that what it is, something new coming into this area? What are we looking at, what we're doing at this point?
Mayor, good evening. As I understand it, Mayor, the entire tract begins at Houston and runs all the way and includes the first home, I'm sorry, next to the first home in that open space. Is that correct? And then it runs from Houston to the alley. Along in the alley, well, there's already a 20-foot right-of-way. At the east end of the property, there's already a 20-foot alley as well. And I suspect that's the reason why the staff doesn't have an issue with that. Let me tell you where we have issues. We have issues with everything else, and let me tell you the reason for that in terms of rights of way. And I don't mean to teach law to anybody, but the authority of a city commission is based on its ability to have some kind of planning. That is to say, unless the city has some kind of plan for the expansion or extension or improvement of roadways, it really has no power to take property from a property owner. It's illegal, right? And so, otherwise, the city would have to use its eminent domain powers. City of San Juan has no jurisdiction over Sam Houston. I'm sorry, over Veterans Boulevard. So you have no power to expand that. So why would you want to have right-of-way on there? There's no logic to that. Unless someone can point out the logic for that. But just wanting to have more land doesn't justify it. On Sam Houston, unless you have a plan on the books, that there's some plan to widen that road in the future, what's the reason for selecting my client and taking his property away?
Well, let me just correct you on that part, Mr. Ramirez. I understand your arguments with respect to the taking issue, but there's no selective selection of your client. I think what planning is trying to implement on this particular permit is the same thing that they implement on all permits. So I understand your argument with respect to taking, and certainly understand the argument you're making on behalf of your client, but just to correct the minutes for that, to correct the record for that, it's not so much that we're selecting this individual, this property owner to say, we're going to do this to you.
Well, I don't know what you're correcting. That's my legal opinion. And what I'm suggesting is that unless the city of San Juan has a definitive plan on the books to widen that road, it has no power to take the property. Now, If there were an actual plan on the books that said, well, the city commission has actually discussed a plan, and we're going to widen this roadway, even if it's 20 years down the line, then you've enunciated some plan, some logic, that then puts in effect your power to then use your subdivision regulations to obtain that right-of-way. But there's nothing.
But it does make logic that that street is going to be expanded, just like the city of FAR has expanded their side of the street
Well,
recently. So it just has logic that that is a main thoroughfare here for the city of San Juan.
but that's not the test. The test is that you have absolutely no plan for it.
Well, I'm
Those
telling
plans
you
should have
right
started a
now
long
that we do have
time ago,
plans.
Mr. Ramirez.
I'm sorry?
I said, those plans should have started a long time ago, and there's always room for improvement. I mean, how could we just go and let, we do everybody, Mr. Ramirez? I mean, and I
Well-
think we should continue the process. What makes these people special about them, living, just remaining on the other side? I mean, there's room for improvement all the time, and maybe there is a plan later on. I mean, I don't know, in fact, if there is or not in concrete right now, but I'm more than sure there's gonna be later on in the future a plan to be able to widen that road. I mean,
All I am saying
know
to
he's
you-
he's your client, and you do a great job of defending him, but, I mean, you have to think of the city itself.
No, I'm absolutely thinking of the city.
Yeah,
Because what I'm saying to you is that you have absolutely no plan, you've never discussed a plan, whatever, for expanding or widening this roadway.
I think it
There's-
started today.
Well, I
Well,
think
that's
the
not the
other-
way, that's not the way it works.
I think the other thing too, Mr. Ramirez, is that whereas previously this may not have been a
That part of our
consideration,
thoroughfare plan.
the fact that the city of FAR is widening
San Houston.
their portion
Expanding it, making it wide.
of the road is to put additional, it's going to light a fire under the city to also do the same. Whereas in the past, it might not have done that. We might not have had
Now-
that motivation.
Let me make this to you. If there were in fact some kind of plan that you have, if the staff would say, Mr. Ramirez, we have this plan on the books. It's a 5-year plan, it's a 10-year plan.
What we've done, Mr. Ramirez, if I may, Mayor, if I may
Please.
just address that, there's a development process. The trigger mechanism, and I think this is part of what Mr. Munoz was going, is we're not approaching this client like we would just for the dedication of right-of-way, a donation. The trigger mechanism is the redevelopment of the site. I think his intent is to sell the store and the vacant property at some point in the future. He's going to cause demand for roadway services by developing that track in the back. What the city of San Juan has done, just like all cities here in the area, at least countywide, we've adopted the Hidalgo County Thoroughfare Plan. That thoroughfare plan basically says that roadways need to have a certain width, a certain paved section, and although there is no time associated with those improvements, that the city is preparing to do that at a future date, either through the MPO or with our own means as it's necessary. Our subdivision ordinance entertains that the city acquired that right-of-way or obtained that right-of-way dedication via the development process. And you're right, refer to the plan. In this case, the plan is basically the Hidalgo County Thoroughfare Plan. What we've done is we've enhanced that plan. In fact, just recently, I think 2 months ago, I think we amended our thoroughfare plan to include some of the local roadways that are not of county consequence, if you will. They're not a thoroughfare like Sam Houston that goes from the city of Alamo to San Juan to McAllen and so on and so forth, FAR, et cetera. Some of our local roadways we felt that were left out, and so we amended that into the plan. So our basis is just basically operating from the notion of the fact that the subdivision ordinance enables the city to pursue that requirement to dedicate right-of-way, and essentially to ensure that at future, as development continues taking place, that we're in a position to expand these roadways once we, once we have a specific intent to do a roadway via construction plans, funding, et cetera. So again, the trigger mechanism for us is just this developer, because we do look at him as a developer, coming to the city and complying with the city's development codes. That's our basis for having that requirement. And McAllen has it, Farrett has it. I
I think where we differ is that I don't believe that designation of the plan itself, the designating of the plan itself is sufficient. Let me tell you what I mean by that. You also have a plan that says that at some point you would have a roadway, Stewart Road, extending north, right? Does that mean that every time that a developer comes into the city and is going to develop in that area, that you're going to take that right away, and that you will be consistent in taking that right away? I don't believe that you've been consistent in doing that.
That would be the intent under the city subdivision ordinance.
What I'm saying is that you have not been consistent in doing that. Now, but I think that you probably have a stronger case where you've actually allocated money in those areas. I don't think that you have any budget plan at all for Sam Houston.
No, in this case, it's based on state statute and the fact that that's enabling to the city via the subdivision ordinance, and the thoroughfare plan is a component of that subdivision ordinance. That's our basis. And it wouldn't be any different than if we needed to get right away here in front of this thing. And I mean, even the city would have to, on its own property, would have to look at the dedication issue just for planning purposes, if nothing else. Not because construction is imminent, but because we need to make sure that we don't have other signs and things encroaching on that future right-of-way. And then at that point, should the city go through the typical acquisition, it's going to cost the taxpayers a significant amount of funds. So our approach is just basically based on the subdivision ordinance, state statutes that enable the city to pursue right-of-way dedication, and the fact that we do it on the basis of the county thoroughfare plan. So it's already a predefined amount.
All right.
It's nothing arbitrary that we go out there and say, okay, you give me 10 feet here, 15 feet. I mean, that's made public via the city's dedication.
Clarify something also. So the issue is the 15 feet on Sam Houston and the 20 feet on Veterans. You don't have an issue with the utility easement, or you said item 4 is no longer.
Yeah, the problem that you have is this, and by the way, that's my first request, that alternative requests. In case the first one doesn't work, you move to the second one, right, Council? There's an existing improvement there. At the corner, there's a gas station, and they've got underground tanks, and they've got on top they've got the tanks and so forth. You essentially would be removing 20 feet on that, or 15 feet?
15 feet from Sam Houston, from the property line, and then from Veterans, it will be 20 feet.
So 20 feet from the curb, or maybe
Not from the curb, from the property line.
from the property line. So you really are almost removing his gas pumps, okay? It's not your typical situation where you have an open land acreage where you're taking the right of way because there's going to be a street widened. Here, you're holding him hostage and saying, okay, if you don't give us the 20 feet right of way, you may not subdivide the track next door, right? And so I don't want to make a misrepresentation, but I suspect it would affect. Have you measured? It would affect the gas pumps, right? See, and that's where it would be an eminent domain. It would be a condemnation. So, but that's your call. I mean, whether you want to go through that fight. I don't think that we would have necessarily an issue on the second lot, the one that's open, the one that's next door, where it's just a vacant lot, because there we're not giving up necessarily any improvements on the land, but we certainly would be giving up improvements on the corner lot, and we have a contract for sale. Certainly, that contract for sale would be gone as a result of that. But that's essentially the first request. Second request is give us a variance if you can, obviously. And the third one is if you can't give us a variance on the corner, well, we certainly would request a variance on the next door lot. But I really believe that the corner lot, you really have an eminent domain matter.
I'd like to review it a little further before making a decision. I'd really like to look at the property lines and how it affects it and get legal.
I go along with Commissioner Ramos. Our agenda doesn't indicate that we can go into executive session for issues. It wasn't posted in the sense that we could go into executive session in the event legal issues came up. So if council doesn't mind, we could table it for tonight, and maybe he and I can meet.
I just,
start.
and pardon me, 'cause I'm confused. You're asking for the variance, the Planning and Zoning Commission is recommending the variance? So we're halfway there.
Well, you have no power on Houston, so you're not giving anything up on Houston. On veterans, I'm sorry, on veterans.
And those are the, you don't
Yeah.
have a problem with the utilities?
No, but I think that we're, and I would differ with you. I think you can go into executive session whenever you have a legal issue, but that's me. I really think on the corner lot is where the issue is. I think we could give up because I agree with whoever said it, that we are imposing more traffic on the street, even when we develop that open lot. But on the corner lot, it's already developed. We would be cutting into those pumps, and we're basically destroying the sale.
Absolutely true.
And I think there's certainly an impetus there for them to go out and hire some lawyer and, at least try and create some issues for us. So,
Yeah, let's, motion to table. I'll make the motion to table. Oh, second.
Made the motion to
Make the
table the
motion to
item.
table this item for further review with the legal counsel. Is there a second?
So moved.
Then we're tabling this motion till further.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice dig.
Is there a motion for approval of the minutes,
Nice
subject to the corrections?
Make that motion, Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor state aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned at 7:28.
I hadn't even thought about the pumps.
Caught me by
I
surprise.
thought about the pumps. I mean, the pumps are